Hello, and welcome to Future Ready Voices. This is a new episode that we're starting where we're going to be talking with senior leaders, CEOs, about future-focused mentalities and how they're actively trying to address the future of work. And today with me, I have Dr. Jennifer Sciubba. Dr. Sciubba has been a very renowned person. She's been around, and she has been a tenured professor at Rhodes College. She has been an international speaker on the TED stage, community forums, and global stages. She's been published in The Atlantic, Harvard Business Review, and The Washington Post, among others. She's the author of 8 Billion and Counting. Check it out on Amazon. And then globally recognized expert on political demography. And of course, she is the president and CEO of PRB, and of course, my CEO as well. So welcome, Jennifer. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Felipe. Glad to be here with you.
Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is PRB for those that don't know?
Sure. Well, I think these two things kind of align because for me personally, I've always found a real passion in taking complex information about what makes the world work and translating that for audiences so they actually need it and so that they can really understand it and put it to use. That was one of the things, as much as I loved being a scholar, I felt like too often we weren't really empowered to make sure that all that hard work we were doing was put to good use. And that's exactly what PRB does as well and has done for 96 years next month. We're having our birthday, nonprofit birthday. And we are really kind of the translator in chief for this world, helping people find these signals through the noise that's out there.
That's amazing. 96 years, that's a long time. So let's dive into some topics here about the future of work and starting off with workforce demographics and labor supply. How would you describe the structural shifts in workforce supply and what do current demographic trends tell us about the challenges ahead?
Well, we are really at a place where there's tremendous change. And so I know that every generation at any point in time, they always have the sense that like nothing's been like this moment before, but really it's the case. And so we know this when we look historically, we have seen an unbelievable shift in age structure. And that when you think about, as an employer, who is your average employee? That person is different today and will be in the future than they would have been years ago. And that matters because how we were kind of trained, the kinds of expectations that we had formed about what the world of work would look like, those were formed in a time when the demographics looked different. So overall, the structural shifts that we are seeing are a much older workforce across the world. And in some places, a shrinking workforce. There are actually over 40 countries in the world that have already had peak population and are now have shrinking populations. Besides just those countries, that happens even in the US. So PRB demographers have calculated that between 2020 and 2024, over 40 counties have had shrinking populations. So for many of your listeners who are in different parts of the United States, they may say, wow, this actually hits home for me because we're having a hard time with our workforce there.
All right, well, thank you. And for those of you out there, I am not a demographer by any means. I've been here for a year and a half, and I've been learning a lot about demography and how it impacts HR. So it's been something that's been so valuable. All you HR leaders out there, senior leaders, a lot of us are reactive when it comes to data. We react to our surveys. We react to turnover reports, retention, time to fill. What if we use the data to be proactive? And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to Jennifer today about this, because it is something that's very relevant in our field. And if you want to follow Jennifer Sciubba, you can follow her right there by scanning the QR code, and you can follow her on LinkedIn. So Jennifer, you were on the TED stage, and there's something that you mentioned on the TED stage I want to share. So if you can go to that clip real quick.
Are the foundation of everything in a society. We're the workers and the voters and the soldiers and the caregivers. So how many of us there are and who we are, that matters. We're on track for there to be more people over age 60 than under the age of 14 by the middle of this century. That radical shift in modern human society presents us with a world of possibilities. Our demography is our destiny, yes, but how we react to that demography is not preordained. What possible worlds might we create if we thoughtfully plan for an older, smaller population?
Just to make Elias. All right. I don't know if that clip worked or not, but that's fine. So if you want to check out her TED Talk. Okay. But with that, you mentioned about what areas of talent HR should be planning for, and what area is the most uncertain for the future.
So yeah, most uncertain for the future. There's a real power to taking a demographic lens to look at the world, but there are also limitations to it. And I think one of the things we do here at PRB is we try to always take this information about populations and we put it in context. And I would say that's the case when we think about HR planning as well. It's not just going to be, all right, what percentage of, or how big is this year's graduating college class, to think about who might be coming in if you have kind of this a labor pool that would really draw heavily from that. Who are these people? And I think that's where we really have a lot of these uncertainties, is that when demographic trends combine with broader social trends, technological trends, because the great thing about demographics is it really is a crystal ball for the future. You want to understand how many people will be entering the workforce in 10 years, you just minus 10, and they're in elementary school right now, right? Or if we want to think about, retirees, the same kind of thing. So many people of the future are already born today, but it's when we start interacting with other trends that it actually increases the uncertainty. So
it would allow us to plan. Is there a certain area or a certain demographic age group you think that is changing faster than others?
I'm sure everybody wants to go to the younger folks. We always have this impression at any point in time. It's like, oh, they're technological natives, or the way that they've been educated is different. But I actually think that it's probably on the older end of the workforce where we need to get a greater understanding, and that there are a lot of changes, because those of us who, actually over age 40 is now considered the older workforce. But we're really trying to grasp how to incorporate AI into our work, for example. It's something we've been talking about a lot here at PRB, and thank you for doing so much with that. I think there's a real dynamism to how people who've been in the workforce for several decades are trying to adjust to the world around it. And I think that that's something really valuable. And I'm afraid that too often we kind of write off the people who've been in the workforce for so long and just focus on the fresh, shiny penny that's coming in.
All right. Well, that's very enlightening. And I think, obviously with AI and things changing, it definitely impacts all the generations. But let's talk about migration in relations to retention and recruitment. There's some questions that people submitted here. And one of the questions was, how should company leaders view international migration as part of the talent strategy? Are there limits, challenges that affect how much you can rely on recruiting global talent?
That is a very great question. And, I always say that migration is so much more political than it is demographic. And so the way that was worded, I really like, because it's how much can they rely on this for a talent strategy? And the answer to that, of course, is political. And we don't get political here at PRB in the sense that we're taking a stance. We're pointing out what is likely to happen and what is happening. And it's true that really, and if anybody's ever attended a talk with me before, they'd know this little fun fact, but most people don't move. We've got over 8 billion people in the world, and 96% of those are still living in the country in which they were born. So when you think about the 40 shrinking countries already, over 40, combined with a mostly static global population, you can start to see that there really are limits on relying on migration for a talent strategy. It would be an insufficient talent strategy on the one hand. On the other hand, of course, it is the case that if you live in a country like Canada, the United States, Australia, migration has long been a part of your labor pool. And so as long as companies understand that there is a limit to that, and that they may continue to really see strains in their pipeline of talent, then I think they would have a more balanced approach to incorporating migration in their strategy.
That's fascinating. Actually, and for any HR leaders out there, obviously, that's something you can think about, because a lot of times we are trying to get creative, trying to think differently, and this kind of data really helps us fine-tune our search. So let's talk about training and continuous learning, because that's a big part of HR, obviously, and a lot of people are struggling with that with AI. But before that, let's go to a quick clip of your TED Talk where you talked about this a little bit.
We're going to have to work longer. Me too. You too. And that's because in nearly half of economies that the OECD tracks, fewer than 10% of people over the age of 65 still work. That is not going to fly in a resilient world. But in a resilient world, we've rethought what work looks like at older ages, and we strategically leverage technology to maximize our productivity. And we can work longer because we're healthier. In a resilient world, we finally realized that investing in health is a much better use of time and resources than trying to dictate population size.
All right, we're back. So that was a fascinating part of your TED Talk there. And given the challenge of demographic landscape that you described, how should we be thinking about technology and AI in the future? And what does this mean for skill development in the workplace or even in schools prior to entering the workforce?
Yeah, we have to consider, you asked about migration a moment ago. And so if I think about, sometimes I frame it as a menu for adaptation. We want to have this resilient world. We know the backdrop is changing demographically. So how do we adapt to this new reality? And there's a menu that companies and governments can both choose from when they're thinking about the best path forward for adapting. And I never order just one thing off the menu, right? So countries and companies probably wouldn't do that either. Migration might be part of that talent strategy. Different flavors for companies. But technology is also going to be on there, no doubt about it. And lately, I think 3 talks in a row that I've given, I was speaker number 1 and speaker number 2 was on AI. And so really we see people pairing these 2 things more and more, understanding that these are 2 massive forces reshaping the workforce. We absolutely have challenges with having current working age populations figure out how to best use AI to increase productivity. Companies are trying to figure out how to balance privacy with the need to cut costs. And I think there's also a real challenge with potentially leaving people behind as AI adoption and different technological adaptations come in so quickly. And so a concern would be that perhaps your older workers who are going to comprise a greater proportion of your workforce are left behind, and we end up with this displacement of them at a time when we really need them the most due to the numbers shifting.
It's fascinating. It just reinforces how we need to keep on providing upskilling for all generations, really.
Big time.
Regardless of what generation, that upskilling in AI is just happening faster and faster nowadays. So if you're not planning now, you might want to start planning and thinking about it.
Yeah.
So in going on to the next topic of generational and cultural trends, we just talked about that. We have 5 generations in the workforce right now, which is the first time. That's insane. What can you say about the specific generational shifts or distinct expectations, and what trends cut across all age groups regardless of generations?
Yeah, on the latter one, I think we see that more and more. So 2 pieces. One is when I've been talking lately to folks at big companies who are in HR, they express that they really do see generational differences. Now, sometimes when we have a demographic lens, we downplay those because we know that it's really just in a way, an arbitrary cutoff year, right? Like this is the first year, 2025, of a new generation. Well, how different is a baby born this year versus last year going to be, really? Except that these HR managers, they actually feel the differences. And so they say that there's a difference in the approach to what it looks like when the person is at work, or how they feel. And it's stereotypical. It's like what we would expect, but this is what they're reporting. Younger folks, not as perhaps committed to the organization. And those are real challenges that we have to recognize. What I've heard for some strategies for overcoming that is some working across the generations. And I heard a really interesting one last week where this company has found the best solution to skip the Gen Xers, basically.
Nice.
I'm so offended. But they said it's not really that you would take the millennial and pair them with a Gen X person for mentoring, but if you'll skip a generation, they've had the best success with cross mentoring. Okay. Which actually makes sense with what we were just talking about, even with technology and AI and how they could learn from each other. So that seems to be really important. But there are cross-cutting issues as well, and trends that people are seeing in HR. And I'm sure your listeners have heard these, which is everybody, regardless of age, seems to really be rethinking what they want from work versus the rest of their life. And so there's a tremendous value that people are placing on flexibility. And as I go around and talk to different companies, I actually really don't see the companies responding favorably to that. They only seem to think about how it might cost them something, how it might lead to needing to monitor people more. But the more that companies and management pulls away from what it is that workers are wanting across generations, the more we're going to have these stresses. And I think that those companies that work to institute more flexibility, first of all, they're doing a great job adapting to the demographic shifts, because when you've got older workers and you might need to keep them in the workforce longer, flexibility is one way to do that. But I think that those will become the attractive workplaces. I mean, we certainly try to do that here at PRB. Hopefully this leads to people enjoying being here. And so perhaps they will come out on top.
I love that. And, there's so much value in what you said there, because the reality is that with that flexibility comes trust, which is a huge thing that people look for. And I think when you look at the multi-generationals coming into the workforce, every generation has made an impact in the workforce. I know that my parents' generation, they were working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Gen X came in, we did 5 days a week, a little bit. Now it's, these Gen Zs and millennials, they want more flexibility.
Yeah.
I think it's just a natural progression of the workplace sometimes. And I think learning from different generations definitely can make a huge difference.
The trust piece that you just raised, I think that's really profound, actually, because, and I haven't thought about it that way before, but if you think about all the strains that we have in our society these days, it is obvious to everyone that there's just a lack of trust, right? We've got governments around the world and citizens and mistrust between them and among each other. And so, perhaps it is that is mirrored in even our workplace approaches. And so the more we can kind of have this trust as capital, the more successful we will be.
And I will say that in the place that I've worked in 31 years in HR, when there's been trust in the workplace, not only have the employees been happier, the surveys have been better, the engagement's been better, the productivity's been better. That trust really does touch on a lot of things. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about, you brought up Gen Xers, who are famously known as a sandwich generation. And let's talk about elderly care and child care.
Yeah.
We had a question here that many employees need support of aging family members. In rural areas especially, there are far fewer care workers, which makes sense. How can companies address caregiving challenges? For instance, offering flexible schedules, caregiving leave, partnerships with elderly services.
Yeah, this is a huge issue. And, you raised one of them, which we talked about a moment ago, which is flexibility. I think that is key. The other is to realize that it's often a season of life for an employee. So we have just this all or nothing mentality these days anyway. But if we can get rid of the all or nothing mentality, we should realize that whether it's childcare or care for an older adult in your life, it's typically for a season of life. So if you want to have this good relationship with an employee that you want to be over the long term, it also means recognizing that in certain times, they're in a season of life where they're under different kinds of strains and stresses. And so if you've already poured into them and invested in them and they in you, then you'd want to support them during that season of life, which will have an end at some point for good or for worse. And so that flexibility can really be something that doesn't necessarily change your relationship with that employee forever, or has to, it has this all or nothing approach to it, but can really be more bespoke. Now that's expensive, right? Like, how in HR are you going to spend the time to work with, these 200 people on individual plans for that? So I'm not saying that it is easy. I'm just saying that with the all or nothing, what ends up happening is that when people don't get the flexibility that they need to do the care, they often step out completely.
Yes. And I mean, that's so true. And it's so important, because the reality is people have so many challenges, and it is almost like a roller coaster, or it's evolving, because, look at myself. When I was single, I didn't mind working late hours. I would work all the way through, but then I had kids. That moment in life, like you said, I wanted more time there. My kids grew up. Guess what? I have more time for the workplace. My parents get older. So it is a very big roller coaster. And any of you that follow me know about my 93-year-old mother I talk about all the time, who is amazingly active, but not everyone is as fortunate. People have a lot of needs out there. And especially in the rural areas where you don't have that extra care or accessibility, we need to think about how our employers doing more to help the elderly care. So let's talk about childcare and multi-generational families, because that's where I'm at right now. And so we're seeing more employees juggling childcare and elderly care at the same time. How might this shape policies on flexible work or family leave?
Yeah, if we're looking globally, it's really interesting to see that it is not enough for a government to say, okay, we're going to mandate that employers have family leave. They can put this in place. This is something that's happened in Korea, for example, where I've gone to speak a few times lately. But the employees, even though they are entitled to have that, if the workplace culture is not such that it supports that and they feel like they'll be penalized for it, then they won't take it. And so I think it's about creating these cultures at work and I'm really stuck on this trust word that you brought up, that do have this trust in their employees, that they're taking this leave because they really need it, not because of, they're trying to use it to get out of work. So what kind of work cultures do we have that really respect that people have these extra demands on their lives? We're whole people, right? So even outside of these walls, we have other lives, and what's happening outside these walls affects what happens inside them.
Absolutely. And and one thing that you mentioned there made me think about this. We have so many people that are out there trying to make these changes in life, and they're trying to utilize the benefits that we offer. If leadership isn't setting the example and utilizing those same benefits, showing them it's okay to do, people might be a little bit leery about using them. So
you're trying to tell me I need to take more vacation?
Yes, please. No, I'm kidding. No,
that's what I heard. That's what I heard.
No, but I think that even when I know the first time I took parental leave for my child, people are like, I didn't know we could do that. It's in the policy. Mm-hmm. We've never seen anyone do it. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, whether you're HR, you're in senior leadership, you're the CEO, practice what you preach. I mean, I'm not saying take child leave if you don't have a child, but but look at those opportunities to make sure that those benefits are being utilized, because if they are just for show.
That's a great point. Like if I say workplace culture is important, modeling that from the top down is a really great way to do it.
And you do a great job of modeling. You really do. No, you really do. Seriously.
You feel like you have to say that.
No, I came from the corporate world, and trust me.
I know. Wait, I need to work harder. Okay, no.
No. She definitely sets a good example. And again, the trust matters. All right, so let's talk about something. So first of all, if any of you have questions here that you all would like, please share them in the chat. We'd love to. Sharon Byrne, thank you for joining. She said that flexibility and trust is very important. It increases morale, productivity, loyalty, and much more. Yeah. You're absolutely right, Sharon. And a lot of people out there are dealing with challenges in the workplace. Feel free to ask your questions here, and if we can't get to them today, we'll address them later on. But I want to go into some questions here that I think a lot of our viewers here are going to resonate with. Let's talk about you and LinkedIn. Because getting a CEO on LinkedIn, y'all, is not easy. We have tried to, people always try to get CEOs on LinkedIn, and CEOs get some of the most engagements on LinkedIn. Now, you mentioned in your book, 8 billion and counting. Yeah. 8 billion people. Do you know that a little bit over 1 billion of those 8 billion are on LinkedIn?
Wow.
Okay? So 1 billion are on LinkedIn. And that's why when you do any kind of activity on LinkedIn, you're going to stand out. You know why? Because only about 2% of people create content.
Oh, wow.
So 2% out of 1 billion, think about how a CEO might stand out if they actually were engaged on LinkedIn. So with that being said, in your view, why is being active on LinkedIn important for business leaders today, and how has it benefited you?
It works. I mean, I will say it absolutely works. So it is the one platform that I've been on where I'm actually able to connect with the people I want to connect with. And it feels like it has broken down that wall. So if there's a really fancy person that I wish that I knew, I actually have a lot of luck in having them write me back on LinkedIn. So I'm sure it's not 50%, but it feels that way. And I guess that's what really matters. So it breaks down those barriers to access.
That's awesome. And any examples of how LinkedIn has helped PRB?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Tons. I think, we have some, I don't want to call out individual people in case they don't want to be called out, but we have really lovely people in our network who maybe I've connected with on LinkedIn and are now really close friends of PRB and happy to introduce us to other people. We can reach our funders that way. We can reach the people who need to use our information that way. All of those things.
And it's one of the things that I've always been a big fan of using LinkedIn is showcasing the workplace, employment branding. There was time when we painted this kitchen that we're in right now, and there's 3 or 4 of us that were painting, and we took a picture and posted on LinkedIn, and we heard from
A
somebody.
funder noticed and complimented our workplace for just like, this seems like a great place to work.
And for the employees, just getting their hands dirty and trying to improve the workplace. And I think that sends a big message. So what would you say to fellow CEOs about being on LinkedIn as to why they should invest time there?
Oh man, I would say it's hard. It's hard. I've done so many things in the last 2 weeks that I thought, oh, this would make such a great LinkedIn post, and I do not have time to do it. And I'm afraid to do a LinkedIn post with all the other emails that I need to write back. And I think even though it's hard, it is worth doing. And well, most of the time those things go together, don't they? So just carving out a time, like some people love a Monday morning to get that kind of thing done. Some people love a Friday, but just these little touches once a week would be better than nothing, because it really does. There is value in doing it.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I hope a lot of you leaders are out there listening to it, because she has made a big impact on LinkedIn, and she continues to grow. And so it's something that I think she's setting an example for a lot of CEOs out there. So any other advice you want to give out there for any leaders, best practices or anything that you want to share?
LinkedIn related, other related, anything? I would say that if you bother to listen to this and show up, you are already doing what needs to be done in terms of incorporating a demographic lens into your work. A lot of the times I will give talks where by the end of it, people are like, that is so interesting. Well, these are amazing data points. And then they would say, I don't really know what to do with that, though, when I take it back to my team. And it's because they want to make it more complicated than it needs to be. This is really just kind of part of strategic foresight. And what that means is being armed with more knowledge, so that as you go through these exercises about strategy and planning, that is in your brain and you are using it to inform your decisions. So just by learning about it, you can check the box that you're using it. So it doesn't mean that you have to go even deeper if you do not want to. Just increasing your awareness works.
That's wonderful. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for spending time and sharing this.
Thank you, Felipe.
I feel like I've learned even more than I have in the past year and a half sometimes.
Thanks for bringing your tremendous network to PRB.
Oh, it's our pleasure. And Pro, thanks for the incredible discussion.
Yeah.
I was listening to a business podcast recently, and one of the speakers said that the remote work is the big reason why modern dating is difficult.
And he would end remote work. And that was from Apurva Jadhav, our excellent fellow at PRB. Yeah, we put an end to remote work to... Interesting. Yeah. Well, I wonder I guarantee you this person would have some feelings about, fertility rates being low and what lack of flexibility would be there as well.
So Jennifer, for those watching and listening, how can they learn more about you and PRB if they are interested in reaching out? Well,
we have a fancy refreshed website that I hope people will go to take a look at what we do.
We have a QR code.
Fantastic. So, in fact, we are really leaning into the future of work as an area where we can take our many decades of expertise, but tailor it to some of the challenges that people are having right now. And so data and evidence informed decision making at the company and government level is exactly what we're hoping, because we want overall to just have a better world, right? We want to increase well-being, and considering how much time we all spend at work, then we certainly want to make that part of what we do here.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I appreciate you sharing your insights. I hope everyone learned a little bit today. And if you want to learn more, reach out to Jennifer on LinkedIn. Follow PRB on LinkedIn. We have a QR code for, I think, PRB's site as well. We are going to be doing another show of Future Ready Voices in the future. If you'd like to be on the show, reach out, let us know. But for all of you out there listening, please take time to listen to your staff. Think about the opportunities of using data to help you save time, to help you be proactive instead of reactive, and help you just be a better employer overall by listening to your staff about what they need, because the future of work is changing, and if we don't change along with it, it might be a little more difficult. So thank you all for a wonderful time. Thank you, Jennifer, again.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you next time.